Okay, so welcome everybody to Midweek Matters. I'm going to introduce you, and we are very grateful to have with us joining tonight Jon Champion. Jon is a screenwriter based in Hertfordshire. He began his career by working in development, providing script coverage and working across a slate of projects in various stages of the pre-production process. In 2022, Jon earned a place on the duly noted script editing training scripts scheme run by 11 Film. During his time on the scheme, he worked as a trainee script editor on the Apple TV series Trying. And in 2023, Jon was one of 12 writers to earn a place on the Channel 4 screenwriting course, which is run by Philip Shelley and has been running for 13 years. The 2023 course received over 2,000 applications. And from January to June, the 12 writers, well done, Jon, for getting on, developed an idea for an original pilot script shepherded by 2 professional script editors. Following the conclusion of the course, the 12 scripters are sent out to the wider industry in an effort to propel the careers of the writers. Jon is going to explore his creative writing journey and tips for getting us all started in creative writing, whether it's journaling, script writing, blogging, or any other form of self-expression. Thank you so much, Jon, for joining this month's Midweek Matters, exploring the world of words.
Wow. How do I possibly live up to that intro? Thank you, Miriam. Hi everyone, it's lovely to speak to you all. I hope I'm not too covered in sunlight. I hope that's not distracting. If it is, I can edit this. But yeah, lovely to chat, and yeah, happy to answer any questions throughout. I guess the best way to start is at the beginning. So just to kind of provide you with some context. So as Miriam said, I'm based in Hertfordshire, which is about half an hour from London, quite luckily. I've been here forever, and grew up with 3 older siblings who were all kind of interested in film and TV. And
on the Thames Water website.
I can hear noise. Is that just me or?
It's gone now.
Okay. So yeah, 3 older siblings who were all kind of demonstrating an interest in film and TV and music and books, anything kind of story oriented. So I was kind of the early customer, just soaking everything up and enjoying what I was consuming. As I got older, I think I was, oriented towards trying to emulate that level of creativity. I think film was the first kind of the real portal to that world. Yeah, it just sort of, it had me by the scruff of the neck from quite an early age. So throughout sort of primary school, I knew that writing was something I loved. I went to school in the noughties, which is a very strange decade when you look back now. One of the reasons why is because laptops weren't really a thing yet. It was kind of, if you had a laptop, you were quite bougie. It was like, oh, this guy has a laptop, he must have stocks in Microsoft or something. So laptops were quite new. Having had a few assessments for handwriting, my teachers and Senkos decided that I would benefit from having a laptop to do school work because my handwriting left a lot to be desired. So I was given a laptop at quite a young age, and I was able to. It was mine. It came home every day, so I'd be at home and I'd have this laptop sitting there, and so I would use it outside of school, and rather than surf the internet or um do anything else. I just started typing stories. That felt like the best thing to do with this new piece of tech. So yeah, I just started writing a lot, enjoying it, trying to write books, and failing miserably. But yeah, I sort of built up a nice library of stories that were quite visual looking back. So that was happening a fair bit. And then when I was 9 years old, the TV show Friends was ending. I put up with Friends. It started. Friends aired for the first time the year before I was born. So it was in my house before I was. And I just sort of I'd never known a life without friends. So when it was ending, I was sort of I couldn't quite get my head around the idea. I was like, wait, so after this episode there's no more friends? Why? How? But nevertheless, it ended, and I remember watching that final episode when it aired on E4. I watched it with my mum and dad, um, and I just remember being profoundly moved by the experience of watching that finale. It was a key point in my young life so far. I couldn't quite pinpoint why, but I just trusted the feeling. Um, and then a few months after that episode aired, there was a sort of I found this behind the scenes documentary about Friends. It was sort of discussing how the show came to be and the kind of writing process and scripting. And then halfway through this documentary, they showed you footage of the writer's room. And the second I saw that footage, my body just came online. And I thought, what is that? That looks incredible. It kind of combines everything I love, like writing, film and TV, collaboration. Even as an 11-year-old, I thought, okay, maybe that's the new target to aim for. And so throughout secondary school, I carried that ambition quite relentlessly, started writing what I would soon realise to be terrible scripts. Trying to emulate films that I love and just, it wasn't working, but I was driven to try. And then at the end of secondary school, having kind of refined my taste and sensibilities, I went on to study film and TV at the University of Hertfordshire, which was conveniently not far from my house, so I could drive there every day. Luckily, I can drive. And I was saving on rent, so that was ideal. So yeah, studied film and TV for 3 years, which was a lovely experience. The course wasn't incredible, but I was surrounded by like-minded individuals who, we had this shared language of cinema and, visual storytelling, and arguments over films that we thought were good or not. And then at the end of my degree, we had this lecture one day where we were told that our university had a relationship with Warner Brothers in Lewiston, which is again in Hertfordshire. They have a studio here where they film quite a few projects, such as the Harry Potter films and a few Mission Impossible. It's a world-class facility, and we were told that because of this relationship between the university and the studios, they were offering a scholarship, which would kind of entail a year's worth of experience post graduation. So it would basically kind of be a foot in the door, as it were. So I applied quite hungrily, and managed to earn a place on that scholarship. So what was amazing was having something lined up after I left university, which is often quite hard to achieve. So I had this year of exposure to work experience and master classes, and just a really helpful buffet of experiences. And that kind of allowed me to meet contacts and gain a bit of a network. And then after that year was done, because of the experience, I was able to apply for a few jobs with production companies, and eventually found myself doing a scheme with Sky, and they were kind of offering a 6 months work experience placement to underrepresented talent. So I very luckily found a place on that scheme. Again, kind of developed my experience through that, and eventually, and we can circle that back to this, but that eventually led to a job with a production company working in development. And development is the process of getting a project from basically the first draft to hopefully the production process. So it's a very long game, and often you can have projects in development for years that end up going nowhere. So it's very much a kind of gamble, and it's impossible to predict. But what's great for me was it involved a lot of reading scripts. And as a writer, the best way to improve is to read other people's work, especially script writing, because it's such a specific art form. So I was basically learning the craft and handily getting paid for it. So that was incredible. I was there for 6 months, and then COVID hit, so I had to start working at home. I was with that company for 2 years, which was incredible. But I was hungry for a new challenge. I wanted to broaden my experiences in the industry. So on a whim, I decided to leave the company, and as Miriam outlined, did a few things in script editing last year, and then applied for the Channel 4 screenwriting course, at the end of last year. I got the interview. I should say, in applying for the course, you had to send your CV plus a script you've already written. So that was the entire application process. So I sent those two things, not expecting to hear that. Amazingly, I did hear that. So I had to interview for it. I think they interviewed 24 people. So it was a bit of a coin toss. But in the first week of December, I found out I'd earned a place on the course, and began that whole process in January. And again, as Miriam outlined, it was a 6-month process where you basically have to write your own original pilot script. For anyone that might not know, that's essentially episode 1 of an intended show. So we have to kind of think of ideas, start to outline, which I can go into if that's helpful, and eventually, cut to June, we had to submit a second draft completed script. And then after the course is done, those 12 scripts get sent out to the wider industry. The person who runs the course, a guy called Philip Shelley, he's a bit of a wizard in the industry. He has a contact list that's bigger than the comprehension. So he knows a lot of people in the industry. So the fact that he's sending out scripts on our behalf is quite a incredible result for us 12 writers. So that brings us to now, where I find myself looking for or trying to find the next idea to write about, which again I can go into, and B, because of the course and its prestige, I'm now having a lot of meetings with production companies and agents as well. So the hope is that the course will open doors and hopefully lead to jobs as a professional screenwriter, which is obviously what I've been striving to achieve since watching that Friends documentary. So it's been, what are we on? It's been a kind of 17-year ambition, and hopefully it won't be too much longer. So that's kind of where we are now. I'll give myself a second to stop talking because I'm sure you're already woefully bored. But Miriam, is that kind of a fair way to summarize things?
That is amazing. I'm just going to join you on the screen. That was just the most fantastic story. I loved it.
Oh, great.
I've got so many questions to ask you. I'm going to fire some questions at Jon. If anyone else has got any questions they want to fire, please either put them in the chat or raise your hands, and then we'll move to you. But I suppose the first thing I'm curious to ask is, when you saw the I was just making notes while you were talking, when you saw that script room on the documentary, and then you started yourself on this journey, did you ever think, having already written loads of books yourself, did you ever think, oh, maybe I'll be an author instead of a scriptwriter? Like, there are so many ways of writing, whether it's whatever different ways that you could be. Did you ever explore other options as well for yourself, or was it love at first sight?
That's a great question. The script felt immediately like the right thing to pursue. I think my kind of style lends itself to that art form. Because it's less pages, which is handy. So obviously I'm quite lazy, but I think also having loved film so much that it felt like a natural um re recalibration in terms of ambition. But uh, but again, my love for books and fiction has stayed throughout this whole journey. I don't know if you can see this shelf behind me, but it's covered in books I've yet to read and might not ever get around to. But the effort is there. But I love books so much, and I still want to write a novel one day. Um, you know, and that's a very different muscle to work. But it's something I love, so I've definitely not ruled it out. But I think in terms of a tangible career path, screenwriting just feels like the kind of um natural pursuit, I guess.
Brilliant. Georgia, I'm going to bring you on to ask your question. Oh, I think you're on mute. There you go.
Do you ever write about your cerebral palsy, or do you like ignore it?
That's a really good question. I so the script that I sent to the Channel 4 course to apply for the course is all about being disabled. From my perspective, so it's a half-hour comedy drama pilot about a guy with CT trying to have his first romantic relationship or encounter, while his friends are embarking upon babies and moving house and getting married and getting all that adult stuff that just some of us can feel quite alien. It's hopefully a funny and heartfelt look at that perspective. So yeah, I discovered that writing about my side of CP has been really helpful. It happened to coincide with a real hunger for that kind of story. For better or worse, the industry is saying, hey, we want more underrepresented voices to be in front of and behind the camera. So I just sort of pandered to that, and I tried to milk it for everything I can. So yeah, I think it's very helpful to write about your experiences with CP, whatever that might be. Obviously you don't have to. It's not an obligation, but I think there's a level of truth in that that elevates the writing, because it's coming from somewhere pure, and it's often not seen. So
Yeah.
I would definitely advocate for it, but don't feel that you have to always write about it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Georgia. And Tom, do you want to come on camera and ask your question? Let's see if he answers. Oh, hang on. Let me get you on the. There we go.
Hello.
Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, well, I think you mainly answered it. The last question. I was wondering what like genres you prefer to write about.
So that's another, but these are all great questions. But one of the things that I've been realizing is that I have two quite distinct preferences. On the one side, I love kind of personal intimate stories that are told on a really tiny scale. I don't know if I can give any examples, but very kind of intimate, personal, often funny slash heartfelt stuff that makes you laugh and then cry 2 seconds later. I love that sort of thing. But on the other hand, I also love really ambitious, big scale ideas. So for example, there was a show this year called The Last of Us, which is a HBO show based on a very popular PlayStation game. And that's like all about scale and ambition and plot and building a world from scratch. So I realised that my two preferences are very different, but those are the two things that I tend to gravitate towards as a viewer and a writer. I find it easier to write the first thing more than the second thing, because having to build a world from scratch is such a mind-bending process. But yeah, those are the two things that I respond to.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. So I've got, I think what you've said is like one of your tips that you were saying to Georgia was speak your truth.
Mhm.
And speak your truth as you see it. I'm just wondering what other tips that you might have for someone who's exploring that concept of starting to write for themselves, whether it's a blog or a journal even.
Yeah, I realise I've obviously discussed screenwriting a little bit, but in terms of all creative writing, I think first of all it's good to just understand what you like and what you don't like. And that can be quite intimidating because so many works of fiction come with a level of esteem. For example, recently over Christmas, I watched the Godfather films for the first time because everyone says you have to watch you can't not watch the Godfather, otherwise you're not a real screenwriter. So I watched those films. It was I love it. I think that the first two are incredible. Third one is questionable, but I think well, it was hard to get past the hype. It was like everyone loves this. If I don't like it, am I wrong? Am I weird? And I think it's important to think about things in terms of forget about if it's good or bad. Do you like it or not? In my case, I love The Godfather, but if you don't, that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't be a writer. It's just, you have a visceral reaction to things. You either like it or not, and there's no wrong answer. But I think it just learning to listen to that voice is super valuable because it helps you narrow down what you're striving towards creatively. I think also once you've determined the kind of writing that you love, I think it's important to dissect it as much as you can and just pick it apart and try and decipher why you're having a positive response to it. What is it that's making you feel engaged or exhilarated by the writing? Is it the language? Is it the themes? Is it tone? Is it the characters? Is it everything? Just sort of learning to listen to that voice of why you like things, but try to get past the immediate reaction and interrogate the legacy reaction you have to it. I think also one of the things that's really helped me is podcasts and interviews with writers that I love. If you download any podcast app and then just type in a writer who you love, chances are they've done a podcast discussing all of this stuff and their journey. And that's something I've done so much of, and I do it nearly every day. It's to listen to someone else's success story, especially when their career is a career that you want to emulate. It's so kind of it provides a specific kind of fuel. It's so kind of formative. So I found that super helpful. And it's also, it illuminates possible pathways to whatever your idea of success might be. It allows you to understand that it is possible and that people do it every day. It isn't this sort of unattainable goal. It's literally tangible and real. So I found that super helpful. YouTube is definitely the kind of, I don't know what I would do without it. So definitely I would recommend doing that. And lastly, once you've kind of got a sense of what you love, why you love it, and how to possibly build your own career in a creative domain, I think meeting other people that share the same kind of goals and speak the same language and quietly feel like they have something to say. That I think that's my main tip, is to meet as many artists as you can. It just changes the game. Building a network is if you know 100 well-connected people, you're pretty much connected to the entire world. Nowadays, if you 100 people have 100 networks, it's once you have that network, it's the possibilities just expand. So I think, yeah, meeting like-minded artists is the most surefire way to kind of get your career going. So those are a few ideas. That's a very long answer to your question.
It's a brilliant answer. It was really, really so many facets to that answer. Now, can I take you back to the organics of writing? So when you said that you were lucky enough at school to be given a laptop when laptops were really quite a rare thing at school. Have you ever tried any, I'm just thinking about, everyone has different ways of wanting to get their words down. Have you ever tried any of the more sort of speak to text, drag and dictate, anything like that, or is another way of getting those words on the page, as it were?
I've tried a few times to kind of dictate, or to, I mean, nowadays dictation is kind of refining itself. I think it's still quite clunky, but I think it's developing, and that's something I would love to try more of, because one of the things that I think about a lot is, if my hands stop working, what do I do? When I was at school, a lot of my exams, I had a scribe to write my answers. So I had to kind of learn how to articulate thoughts in real time, which is quite handy. So I think, obviously it's easier said than done, but having some kind of scribe is super helpful. Also, just recording yourself speaking is incredible because it's a more sophisticated way of thinking. It's hyper thinking. If you're speaking into an iPhone or a dictaphone, you're forcing yourself to explore ideas in the moment, and you end up saying things that you might not have ever said had you not pressed record. So that's happening a lot now with messaging. Voice messages are kind of the new way to talk to people, which I think is amazing because it's a different way to communicate. And like I said, because there's no one there to shut you up, you end up kind of saying things and finding things that you wouldn't have found otherwise. So if that's possible, you can do that. That's amazing. Those are a few things. Luckily, I use my 2 index fingers to type, and that's all I've got. The other thing is just sort of have a vacation. So I can't type as fast as I think, but luckily I can get by. But yeah, I think to answer your question, just explore as much as you can, try everything. And I think as technology gets better, there will only be more ways to express yourself that way.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to bring Dean in because he's got a question.
Yeah, hi there. Hi, everybody. And I know I'm very, very cheeky asking the question. I've only just come in, but I'm like that. So, yeah, the thing is, John, what I wanted to ask is just something I mentioned last week when we were just sort of having this conversation, about reading, etc. And you're an author, and you've obviously had things published. The thing is, my uncle, my great uncle, who lived in Canada, he was born in Manchester, and he emigrated to Canada in the 60s. And he's a very clever man, and he wrote a book about his life growing up in Salford. And it was very, very well written, and it's been great, but he paid a company to publish the book rather than offering it to. They gave him all the blurb, they gave him, sat him down, when he came over, he was treated him like a VIP. And he had lots of things that didn't really seem to be relevant to launching a book. They gave him all sorts of merchandise with the book cover, like pens and bookmarks and things like that, and all different rubbish, crap, basically. And they gave him like 1,000 books and like sort of left him to it, sort of thing. So what my question is, what if one sort of like one has written something and they want to show it to a publisher or to get it out there, what's the best way? What is the best way, do you think?
Sure. So it sounds like what happened to was it your friend or your brother?
My uncle, my great uncle.
Your uncle. It sounds like what he did was what's known as self-publishing.
Yes,
So
he did. Self-publishing, yes.
When you pay someone to publish, that's self-publishing, which can be a really good way to kickstart your writing career. just to kind of be honest, I'm not an author yet, so
Okay. Okay.
I've never been published yet, but that's the goal.
Okay.
So what I would say is, when you're starting out as a writer, once you gain a certain amount of clout, it's really helpful to get yourself signed up with an agency. You have to get yourself an agent.
Mm.
And that can be really difficult because agencies receive hundreds of submissions of writers trying to get signed by agencies. And obviously, they're not going to read hardly any of what they receive because it's they don't know where it's coming from. But if that publishing company gets an email from an agency saying, "Hi, I represent this writer. This is what he wants to write about. Would you like to have a look at what he's got to offer?" Then much more likely to take you seriously. Um,
Mm.
but as I said, getting signed is super hard. I don't have an agent yet. That's my next goal. Luckily, because of the Channel 4 course, that kind of puts me on the radar of agents, or at least I hope it does. So it might not, but that's one of the goals of the course, is to get the writers signed after the course ends. So what I would say to your uncle is keep hold of the book that he's self-published, because that's super helpful as a writing sample. He can show that to people in the future. But if you can get an agent to sign you, that's a real kind of game changer. Also, again, much easier said than done, but gaining a certain level of clout behind your name is really important as well. You know, there's a lot of writers, anyone can sit and type a thing, but if you have no context to back it up, it kind of doesn't land as well. So I would say try and put yourself out there, meet other writers, get a network, that you start meeting as many writers as possible. Try to send them your work and just get some buzz going. And that will hopefully result in getting signed by an agent who can then help you navigate the world of publishing and what that whole next stage. I hope that answers your question. It is a very hard avenue, but it's not impossible, especially if you already have a book to show for your work. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like that point you made before I asked the question about creating networks. It's a bit like telling 10 people, and then they tell 10, and then it opens up, doesn't it? And it's yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Thank you.
No worries.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Dean. So I'm gonna ask. Well, I'm gonna share a little something, and then I'll put it out to everyone else if they want to share in their experiences. But when I was younger, I spent quite a lot of time writing poetry, and I realized that I realized this wasn't a vocation that I wanted to necessarily take up as a career. But I very much enjoyed the process and enjoyed forming the ideas into words and seeing something completed in a quite a short, a concept in quite a short way. And most of it wasn't particularly sophisticated, but it gave me a really lovely outlet for where I was at that point in my life. And I'm just wondering, not only with you, Jon, but also with anyone else, if you've done anything that you felt that was really helpful or gave you a lot of pleasure and joy for yourself within the creative writing world? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, John, and then we'll move on.
I was just about to say that's a question for everyone, right?
Yeah, but go for it yourself as well if you want.
I mean, it's very tough. I think just I think for me that comes back to reading other people's stuff. I think just reminding myself that other people achieve this, and it's just being reminded of what's possible in this on this canvas. That's the best answer I have. But I don't want to force anyone. But if anyone has any answers to that, I'd love to hear because it's so interesting. But happy to move on if anyone wants to contribute.
Dean, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I did. When I was on holiday, I think it was about 10 years ago, I was on holiday and we go to the same place in Spain all the time. And there was a lovely lady called Karen, still around. She had a beach bar. And there's a few times when, nothing major, but she was really, really helpful and kind to Mum and myself. And I thought I want to do something here because she's a busy lady. She's running a business and she really put herself out. She does it for loads of people as well. She just doesn't, and it can be anything from directing people to wherever they want to go or do it. And she sort of does. She has to do everything herself. She's not just the proprietor. She's not just running the bar. She's the plumber. She's she's everything to do with running a beach bar, which can be pretty dirty sometimes. It can be pretty. You've got to be a jack of all trades. And I thought, something. I'm going to write not about Karen, but I'm going to write about sort of little short stories about people who are in similar situation, and just about where the person in the beach bar like does something really kind, like say they're having a bad day, or where the focus was always the beach bar. And I wrote, it was only I was only really messing about, but what I did was I actually sort of thought about, well, where is this going to be? And it could have been anywhere. And it was just like little 5-minute sketches I wrote and about things that happened, and there was always a beginning, a middle, and an end to it, because that's the thing of writing a story. It's got to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it just made me feel like really, really, felt it. I just thought it was a nice thing to do. It's something a bit different, and I was writing away, and what you're writing for, and I just writing these little stories, and it just made me feel like really, really happy and really creative. It's really, really good.
I think that's what I'm kind of meaning, in a way that, when we're at school, we're told to write this and write that, and actually we kind of sometimes miss the joy of it. But I think there is such a pleasure that can be had in the words themselves, rather than thinking about how I'm going to write and how my handwriting is, and is it legible. It's just the flow. It's just the playing with those words. We've got a couple more people that want to come in, so I'm going to bring you in, Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
Fine. I can't write now physically, but when I was a little girl, at school we used to call it creative writing, and the news, like what we did during the weekend, And anyway, it was round about the time of Dynasty and Dallas. And I wrote a story about some fictitious woman who who goes on a cruise and watches the seagulls go by and finds a man. And I did that in the new when I was about 11, 12. And yeah, I did write a poem and it was very good, but I lost it. So that's, but yes, and when I was about 5, 6, we, if you ever recall your infancy, used to sit on a piece of carpet and the teacher would come and say, what have you done this weekend? Well, I decided to say, well, I had a gorilla in my garden. And I don't know other things. And she really encouraged me to say more. And she was convincingly, really, Sarah, really, did that happen? Yeah, so she didn't, I didn't see her like thinking, don't be silly. So yeah, that's my bit of creative writing.
And have you tried, I know you said you find it difficult to write, you know, from a manual point of view now, but do you ever find that your brain takes you off in those sorts of places again, that you want to capture those ideas and thoughts and
yes, but that can be like a podcast. You could like create stories and that go around the world. And I was in a podcast. I did my own podcast for some time. And anyway, it's round to a halt now. But yes, that's it. Well, yeah, I'd love to.
Never say never, hey. Thank you, Sarah. Tom, you put some stuff in the chat. I didn't know if you wanted to come on and talk about it. And here he is.
But, yeah. No, I was saying, obviously, John got really into writing. John got really into writing because he was given a laptop and wanted to explore that option. I never got that. I was kind of, yeah, I couldn't write, and because of that, I got bad grades, really. So there was no help, no support, and it wasn't that no one wanted to support me or help me, it's no one understood it. So I can do something some days and some days I can't. Or when it comes to writing, for example, I could write a sentence and then my hands hurt so much that I can't write anymore. So it got to the point where I just, in school, for example, I'd sit there quietly and just listen. I still learn. I became very good at listening, but yeah, I can't write anymore. Jess does it all for me now.
Is that physically, you know, it's hard to write by hand or type or?
So my left hand is kind of like I don't have control. I do have control. I'm holding the phone now, but I don't. It's kind of a delay. See my hand, kind of like you maybe. My right hand I can use. I have a little bit more control of my right hand. But holding things like pens and stuff, I can do it, but it becomes very. It hurts quite a lot.
Okay. I think one of the things I mentioned was sort of talking into your phone. You can obviously record voice memos and save them as individual files, which could be chapters of something, or perhaps just sort of ideas for what end up being chapters or something. It might be, I don't know, I don't know if you ever tried speaking a story or just sort of exploring voice recording. That might be a possible way to go. I also, obviously getting a scribe, as I said, is easier said than done. But a possible another way to go. One of the fun things about this is finding a way to do it in the first place, and that can kind of inform the storytelling. That might end up being a way to make your stories stand out from the crowd. Is it had to be accomplished via voice recording or scribe or another way that we haven't thought of. I think just keep trying everything if you feel drawn to, and maybe it might end up being part of the story, the storytelling, if that makes sense. But definitely keep exploring ways to express yourself, because talking to you now, you seem, you've obviously got a lot to give. So just keep giving it, I would say.
One thing I do want to mention while I'm here as well is have you ever tried like Google Voice? I find that really good actually. So it surprisingly works very well.
Wow, is that for searching for things, or is it?
I use it for everything: emails, texting,
Wow.
even just searching things on Google. My whole house is Google. Like I love Google, but
Wow.
the Google Voice, even my phone's Google. It works. I've heard of Siri and things like that, but they kind of miss my voice, especially when I get tired. My speech starts going.
Okay.
But the Google one works incredibly well because you train it as well, so it learns
Great.
at the same time. So it becomes perfect for you, if that makes sense. So I definitely recommend that.
Yeah, that's helped me out a lot. I'm definitely gonna have a go. I'm looking for the right way to try dictation, so that sounds incredible. And definitely keep using it. But you've given me some homework there, so I look forward to trying it out.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that mutual coaching session, I think.